They hadn't even reached the end of the corridor when Hermione caught up with them. "I'm coming with you," she said. "You're not. Do you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Fitch to catch me? If he finds me, all three of us, I'll tell him the truth. That's how I'm trying to stop you, and you can't back on me." "You've got some nerves," said Ron loudly. "Shut up, both of you," said Harry sharply. "I heard something." It was a sort of snuffling. "Mrs. Norris," breathed Ron, scurrying down the dark. It wasn't Mrs. Norris, it was Neville. He was curled up on the floor, fast asleep, but jerked suddenly awake as they crept near least. "Thank goodness you found me. I've been out here for hours. I couldn't remember the new password to get into bed." "Keep your voice down, Neville. The password speaks not, but it won't help you now. The fat lady's gone off somewhere." "Hold your arms," said Harry. "Fine," said Neville, showing them. "Madam Pomfrey mended it in about a minute." "Good. Well, look, Neville. We've got to be somewhere. We'll see you later." "Don't leave me," said Neville, scrambling to his feet. "I don't want to stay here alone. The Bloody Baron's been past twice already." Ron looked at his watch and then glared furiously at Hermione and revealed Neville. "If either of you gets us caught, I'll never rest until I've learned the curse of Bogus Quirrell that told us about and use it onto you." Hermione opened her mouth, perhaps to tell Ron exactly how to use the curse of Bogus, but Harry hissed and her be quiet and beckoned them all forward. They flitted along corridors striped with bursts of moonlight from the high windows. At every turn, Harry expected to learn Filch or Mrs. Norris, but they were lucky. They sped up a staircase to find third floor, tiptoed toward the trophy room. Malfoy and Crabbe weren't there yet. The crystal trophy case glimmered when the moonlight caught him. Cups, shields, plate, and statues winked silver and gold in the darkness. They edged along the walls, keeping their eyes on the door at either end of the room. Harry took out his wand, 'cause Malfoy leaped in and stared at once. The minutes crept by. "He's late. Maybe he's chickened out," Ron whispered. Then a noise in the next room made them jump. Harry had only just raised his wand when they heard someone speak, and it wasn't Malfoy. "Snip around, my sweet. They might be lurking in a corner." It was Filch speaking to Mrs. Norris. Horror struck, Harry waved madly at the other three to follow him as quickly as possible. They scurried silent toward the door, away from Filch's voice. Neville's robes had barely whipped around the corner when they heard Filch enter the trophy room. "There's in here somewhere," they heard him mutter, "probably hiding." "This way!" Harry mouthed to the other and furtived. They began to creep down a long gallery full of suits and armor. They could hear Filch getting nearer. Neville suddenly let out a frightened quake and broke into a run. He tripped, grabbed Ron around the waist, and the pair of them toppled right into a suit of armor. The clanging and crashing were enough to wake the whole castle. "Run!" Harry yelled, and the four of them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Filch was following. They swung around the doorpost and galloped down the corridor, then another, Harry in the lead. Without any ideas where they were or where they were going, they tipped through a tapestry and found themselves in a hidden passageway. Hurtled along in and out near their charms classroom, which they knew was miles from the trophy room. "I think we've lost him," Harry panted, leaning against the cold walls and wiping his forehead. Neville was bent double, wheezing and burping. "I told you," Hermione gasped, clutching at this wedge in her chest. "I told you." "We've got to go back to Gryffindor Tower," said Ron, quickly as possible. "Malfoy tricked you," Hermione said to Harry. "You realize that, don't you? He was never going to meet you. Filch knew someone was going into the trophy room. Malfoy must have tipped him off." Harry thought she was probably not right, but he wasn't going to tell her that. "Let's go." It wasn't going to be that simple. They hadn't got more than a dozen paces, then a doorknob rattled and something came shooting out across in front of them. It was Peeves. He caught sight of them and gave a squeal of delight. "Shut up, Peeves, please. You'll get us thrown out," Peeves babbled, wandering around at night. "Eco-fritters? Tut-tut-tut. Naughty, you'll get curty." "Not if you don't give us away, Peeves, please." "Should tell Filch I should," said Peeves insanely voiced, but his eyes glittered wickedly. "It's for your own good, you know." "Get out of the way," snapped Ron, taking a sweep, and Peeves, this was a big mistake. "Students out of bed!" Peeves bellowed. "Students out of bed down the charms corridor!" Ducking under Peeves, they ran for their lives, right to the end of the corridor when they slammed into a door, and it was locked. "This is it," Ron moaned. They pushed helpless at the door. "We're done for it. This is the end." They could hear footsteps, Filch running as fast as he could toward Peeves' shots. "Oh, move over," Hermione snarled. She grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Hello, Homora." The lock clicked and the door swung open. They pawed through it, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against it, listening. "Which way did they go, Phoebes?" Filch was saying. "Quickly tell me." "Say please." "Don't mess with me, Peeves. Now where they did going?" "Shouldn't say anything if you don't say please," said Peeves in an annoying voice. "All right, please. Nothing. Ha ha ha. Told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please. Ha 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 ha." And they heard the sound of Peeves whooshing away and Filch cursing in rage. "He thinks his door is locked," Harry whispered. "I think we'll be okay. Get off, Neville." For Neville had been tugging on the sleeves of Harry, spat off at the last minute. "What?" Harry turned around and saw quite clearly what, for a moment, he was sure he'd walking into a nightmare. This was too much. on the top of everything that had happened so far. They weren't in a room, as he had supposed. They were in a corridor, the forbidden corridor on the third floor. And now they knew why it was forbidden. They were looking straight into the eyes of a monstrous dog, a dog that filled the whole space between ceilings and floors. It had 3 heads, 3 pairs of rolling mad eyes, 3 noses, twitching and quivering in the directions, 3 drooling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery robes. It was standing quite still, all 6 eyes staring at them, and Harry knew that the only reason they weren't ready was that their sudden appearance had taken it by surprise. But it was quickly getting over that. There was no mistaking that those thunderous growls meant. Harry grabbed the doorknob. Between Filch and Beth, he'd take Filch. They fell backward. Harry slammed the door shut, and they ran. They almost flew back down to the corridor. Filch must have hurried off to look for them somewhere else, because they didn't put as much space as possible between that monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the parade onto the Fat Lady's 7th floor. "Where on earth have you been?" she asked, looking at their red robes hanging off their shoulders and their flushed, sweaty face. "Never mind that, pig's note," panted Harry, and the parade swung forward. They scrambled in a common room, all collapsed, trembling into armchairs. It was well before any of them said anything. Neville in it looked at his never speak again. "What's up to think they're doing, keeping a thing like that locked in a school?" said Ron finally. "If any dogs need exercise, that one does." Hermione had got both her breath and her bad temper back again. "You don't use your eyes? Any of you do?" she snapped. "Didn't you see what it was standing on? The floor?" Harry suggested. "It wasn't looking at his face." "I was too busy with its head." "No, not the floor. It was standing on a trap door. It's obviously guarding something." She stood up, glared at him. "I hope you're pleased with yourselves. We couldn't all have been killed, or worse, expelled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed." Ron stared after her, his mouth open. "Oh, we don't mind," he said. "You think we'd drag her along, wouldn't you?" But Hermione had given Harry something else to think about as he climbed back to bed. The dog was guarding something. What had Hagrid said? Gringotts was the safest place in the world for something you wanted to hide, except perhaps Hogwarts. It looked as though Harry had found it out where the glovey little package from Vault 713 was.